Hi guys, I'm Sav. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's video, I'm going to be going through my May monthly reading wrap-up. I don't know if I said that right. Today's video will be my May monthly reading wrap-up, even though it is June 3rd. But I'm also going to include some books that I hopefully will get to in June. I don't want to set it as a TBR just because I am very much a mood reader, but I'm going to go over the books that I read in May and then books that I think I will want to read in June. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with what we read in May. I'm pretty sure my husband ordered me food. Wait, I think he ordered me food. You guys, he did. He DoorDashed me Taco Bell. Baja Blast, not to freeze the drink. Now let's get back to the video, because now I want to get this done. That way I can eat my Taco Bell while I start editing. Let's go through all the books that I read in May. I actually don't even know how many books I read. 9 books? Not too shabby. It was a weird month. Let's talk about it. Let's go through the books I read. So the first book that I read this month, I actually listened to it on Audible because I'm slowly but surely becoming an audiobook girly. So the first book that I listened to on Audible this month was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I actually listened to Part of Your World, which is like the companion novel to Yours Truly. You don't have to read Part of Your World first, but I highly recommend that you do. So Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez is about Brianna and Jacob. So Brianna comes from this line of like medical professionals and she's in this hospital. Jacob, he ends up coming to the hospital as well. When he first gets there, nobody really likes him. He just doesn't leave a good first impression on them, and Brianna specifically does not like him. They had like a weird interaction, left a bad taste in her mouth, and Jacob, he actually has social anxiety. And if you know what it's like to have social anxiety, then you know he was freaking out. He started a new job, new hospital, new people, worst nightmare. And on top of that, people aren't liking you. Literally worst nightmare. So basically, he goes to apologize to Brianna. He actually leaves it in a note though. He writes her like a letter apologizing, explaining himself that he has social anxiety, and Brianna becomes more open to getting to know him and understanding him. It becomes like a workplace romance, fake dating. There's a lot of elements that go into it. And I do want to say the mental health or like anxiety, the way that it was represented perfectly, and I felt so seen. Jacob's perspective and like his thoughts, it was like, yes, that's exactly it. Not only from Jacob's perspective, but from Brianna's perspective. I thought it was so beautiful, the way that she was so understanding and considerate. I loved it so much. What did I rate it? I just looked on my Goodreads and I rated Yours Truly a 4. But honestly, I would bump it up to a 4.5 now, possibly, just because I loved it so much. Looking back on it, I'm realizing how much I loved it. It's not a 5-star for me just because the ending I didn't love, but everything else about the book, absolutely loved. Okay, the second book that I finished, I actually read it on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copy for this one either, but it was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Yeah, Carissa Broadbent. It's on Kindle Unlimited. I'm pretty sure all of her books are on Kindle Unlimited, so I will definitely continue reading more of her books. If you're on Book Talk, Bookstagram, Carissa Broadbent specifically, I've seen her name circulating a lot. I rated it a 4-star. Let me just give you a little summarization. This book is literally The Hunger Games, but make it fantasy, make it adult, and make it have vampires in it. That's it. Like, read it. I don't know what else I can say that will convince you to read this book. I always forget their names. It's following Aurea. Forgive me if I'm not saying that correctly, but I don't know how to say it, so I'm just gonna say Aurea. Okay, so Aurea is a human, and she's actually raised by a vampire and in like a world of vampires, and she's the only human there. The vampire that took her in was actually the king, and he raised her as his own. He's helping train her to protect herself because she's a human growing up with vampires, but also there's a competition and it's called the Kajari. Is it the Kajari? Yeah, Kajari. So Oria wants to go and compete in the Kajari, which is basically a competition just like the Hunger Games. There's only one winner standing and you get like a wish granted to you, whatever it may be. And she's the only human and she competes amongst all of these vampires, and so throughout the book you're getting all of the trials that she goes through with the competitors, against the competitors. It's just so good. A lot of action, very fast paced. There is like some romance in it as well. We love that. I'm such a romance girly. So there is some subplot romance. It's super fun, super fast paced, and there is a second book as well, and that's also on Kindle Unlimited. So I will definitely eventually read the second book. So the next book that I read was my first 5-star read of the month, and that was Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. Okay, so Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. It is the second book in the Boys of Tommen series. I'm sure you have at least heard of this series or seen it. This was a 5-star read easily. I won't speak too much about this book because obviously I don't want to spoil anything if you have not read Binding 13. So basically in Binding 13, you're getting Shannon. She just transferred to a new school because she got bullied so badly at her previous one. She goes to this new school and basically you're getting her and it's just her experience, and you follow Johnny, and it's just all I can say is this series, it is so beautifully written. I felt every single emotion you could possibly feel while reading these books. The found family, I am such a sucker for found family. It is one of my favorite things about books. I love a good found family. You fall in love with the main characters, the side characters. The side characters become main characters. It's so good, and if you have not started this series yet, just do it. It's worth it. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So after I finished Keeping 13, I did jump into my next 5-star read. I had 2 5-star reads this month, and that was Ignite Me by Tahira Mafi. It is the third book in the Shatter Me series. I just want to say, I don't know what she puts in these books, but I just love it. I talked about this in my last video, so I won't repeat myself, but I don't want to speak too much about this book because it is the third in the series, but Shatter Me, if you don't know, is a dystopian series. It follows Juliet working through this dystopian world, and there's this like a government that's kind of taking over the world, and they're actually making it worse, and so it's going through that, navigating through that. So Juliet, her skin is actually deadly. She touches someone, they will. She has powers. She doesn't know how to control them. She doesn't really understand them. She just doesn't want to touch anyone because she doesn't want to hurt anybody. And so it's basically just her navigating through her powers, how to understand them, how to control them. And it's just really, really good. Ignite Me, this was my first 5-star of the series. I'm sure if you have heard of the Shatter Me series, you've heard Aaron Warner's name. So the next book that I read, it was actually on my Kindle, and it was just a little novella. It's called That One Night by Emily Rath. If you are on Book Talk, then you probably heard of Pucking Around by Emily Rath, and this is like the little prequel novella right before. It was a 3-star. It's just a little novella. It's called That One Night, and it's literally just takes place in one night, and honestly, the novella is just no thoughts, just vibes. You know? If you're picking up what I'm putting down, no thoughts, just vibes. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next book that I read, this was actually for a book club that I am in, and I waited until the night before to read it, and so I binged it in one night. I rated it a 3.75, and that was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides? The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I read this in one night. It definitely kept my interest. This has been a book that has been on my TBR for a very, very, very long time. And honestly, I'm so glad that it was picked as the book for my book club, or I don't know if I would have gotten to it when I did. I do love thrillers. The genres that I normally rotate are like romance, fantasy, and thrillers. And I do love that I got to this thriller finally because it is so talked about and it was highly anticipated for me. But ultimately I rated it a 3.75 because it was enjoyable to read. It kept my interest, but I did guess the big reveal. So yeah, I was proud that I figured it out, but I wanted to be wrong. Like, I love when I read a thriller and I think I have it right, and then it just blows my mind and I'm like, So that's the reason I rated it a 3.75. And also at the beginning, it did start off slow for me personally. Wasn't the worst, wasn't the best. So the next book that I read was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This was also a 3.75 for me. I actually really enjoyed this book. I do see the similarities between this book and Love in Other Words, second chance romance, childhood friends to lovers. Some of my favorite tropes, honestly, so I was really excited to eat this up. I love the then and now timeline. I love when we get to see that happening. So basically this follows Percy and Sam. The then timeline is in the past, basically showing how Percy and Sam meet, their relationship growing, you know, their friendship blossoming and all of that. And then the now timeline is fast forward, they're both adults, they haven't talked in like 15 years, you don't know why, you're trying to figure out why, all of that stuff. This book, I was really enjoying it. It was super quick, super fast paced, very cute. But the thing is, this is my little bone to pick with this book. I did guess the reason why they didn't talk. I did not want to be right. I really did not want to be right, and I was. And the thing is, for me, I know it's a second chance romance, okay? I know forgiveness has to be involved, and I'm all for forgiving people. You know, in second chance romance, it's either the reason is so stupid and you're like, are you kidding me? You guys haven't talked for that long because of that. But this reason was a little too valid for me, where I was like, that's just irredeemable. Is it irredeemable? Irredeemable. Is that a word? The reason in this book, there's just no coming back from that for me personally. I could no longer feel happy by the end of this book. I was just like, yeah. So I was thoroughly enjoying this book up until that part. Then I was just like, like everything kind of got turned off for me. But I did really enjoy this book, and yeah. The next book that I read, it was actually my first ever ARC that was sent to me. It's called Forgive or Forget Me by Anne Einerson. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but thank you so much, Anne, for sending me my very first ARC and for letting me get to read your book before it got released. I'm just so happy and so blessed that I was given that opportunity. So I did give this book a 3.5 stars. It is also a second chance romance, kind of friends to lovers. It was actually very similar to Every Summer After with like the setup of the book. It's the then and now timeline. I will say, I don't know if it was the right time for me to read the book because I did jump into it right after Every Summer After. So Forgive or Forget Me, it follows Olivia and Milo, and it's basically the then and now timeline of when they were younger, how they met, you know. I didn't love the tropes that were in Forgive or Forget Me. It does talk about some pretty heavy topics I don't necessarily reach for in books. It does talk about death and grief, and yeah. The topics were just a little bit heavy for me. I don't think it was, again, the right time for me to read this book. There was kind of a lot going on, in my opinion. I wasn't as connected to the characters and their relationship together, so I think that's where I struggled. But I am very thankful for getting sent this ARC. Thank you so much, Anne. And the last book that I read in the month of May, I actually also listened to it on Audible, but I do have the physical copy, and that is the Matthew Perry memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Yeah. Aw, me and Maddie. I actually am not going to rate this book just because I don't feel right rating this book based on his life and all the struggles that he has gone through. If you have watched the show Friends, and if you love it as much as I do, then you know Matthew Perry, aka Chandler. It's basically him telling a story of all of his struggles throughout his life with drug and alcohol abuse, addiction. I did listen to it on Audible. It's Matthew Perry himself reading the book, so I do highly recommend listening to it. Also, there's like 10 chapters in this entire book. The chapters are insanely long. Sorry, there's 11 chapters. In a 300-page book, there's 11 chapters. I didn't really mind because I was listening to it, but if you were reading it physically, just a warning for you. But I did really enjoy listening to him telling his story. It was very moving, very eye-opening, like things that you would never guess. It just proves that you don't know what people are going through behind closed doors. I just thought it was a very heartbreakingly beautiful story. I highly recommend the story, especially if you are familiar with Matthew Perry and if you are interested at all in his life. Now let's talk about my June hopefuls. So these are all books that I picked out that I do want to get to sooner rather than later, and hopefully I'll get to them in June. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I did talk about this in my last video. One author that I really want to get to this summer is Emily Henry. I do want to read my first Emily Henry book, hopefully this month. This is her first one, I believe. People We Meet on Vacation. I've had this on my shelf for so long and I'm so excited to finally start it and get to it. I have heard that this is people's least favorite of all the books that she has read. I just want to go from her earliest to her newest release because a lot of people say her writing just improves more and more, and I just want to experience that as I'm reading it. The next book that I want to read is actually a new release and I bought it, and that is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. Since I did finally read Every Summer After, I do want to get to Meet Me at the Lake. I am a little bit nervous for this one because I have seen mixed reviews. I have seen good ones as well, but I've seen a lot of not great ones, one will say. It should be a very quick read as well, and I am all for the summer vibes and I just really want to get to it and see my own opinion on it. The next book that I want to read is Restore Me by Tahira Mafi. I really want to continue on with the Shatter Me series, so I will be reading Restore Me for sure in June. This is like a for sure. Okay, the next book that I want to get to is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I'm sure you have seen this circulating around a lot. She just released Practice Makes Perfect. It's a companion novel to this one, so I do really want to read When in Rome. It's very short. I think it'll be a perfect short summer read and give all the cutesy vibes that I would be looking for. So I am super excited for this one. That way I can get to Practice Makes Perfect hopefully soon. The next one that I have, I really want to get to Saving Six by Chloe Walsh. So this is the third book in the Boys of Tommen series. Instead of following Johnny and Shannon though, this one actually follows Joey, which is Shannon's older brother, and his girlfriend, I don't know how to say her name, and his girlfriend, Aoife. Did I just say that correctly? I literally just looked at the pronunciation. Yes, Aoife. Okay. So it follows Joey and Aoife, and you meet both of them in Binding and Keeping 13, and I'm so excited to get Joey's story and his perspective. I just really fell in love with him in Binding and Keeping 13, and even Aoife, like, you meet her and just the things that she did, especially in Keeping 13, I absolutely was like, yes, Aoife, I love you. So I'm so excited to finally read their story and get inside of their minds, and I'm super excited. So I do want to read this in the month of June. And last but certainly not least, a book that I actually already started, so I will have this in my June monthly wrap up, is Queen Charlotte, none other. I am fully annotating this one, so I already did start. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, so I did start it already. I'm fully annotating and tabbing. As I said, I am loving Queen Charlotte. It is currently my obsession, so naturally I bought the book because watching it isn't enough. I need to read it. Thank you so much for watching. That is my May monthly wrap up and my June hopefuls. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you made it this far, please go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Look at me being a YouTuber. Thank you guys so much. It really does mean the world to me if you are on my channel and you clicked on this video, and I hope to see you guys next week. If you have read any of my June hopefuls, please let me know so it will motivate me to actually get to them. Well, I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys next time.